Hello and welcome to Big Data London with Bright Talk. I'm Tim Carmichael from Ensifera, and we're going to be talking today about high performance architectures, next generation architectures, and how they unlock the power of your data. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Mohammed Haji. Mo, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Mo is an expert in high performance distributed systems in which he has a PhD. He has a background in civil aviation, in telcos, and in investment banks, so lots of breadth. And currently his position is as the Principal Solutions Engineer for Couchbase. Couchbase, the company, of course, that provides data platforms for mission-critical applications, which for me means I couldn't have a better expert witness to come and join me today to talk about next-generation architectures.
Thank you.
Mo, let's start, please, with the fairly obvious question for our viewers out there who might be understanding exactly what does it mean to be a next-generation architecture, what does it consist of, and how does that enhance the dev cycle?
Yes. So firstly, I would like to actually thank you, Tim, for this opportunity and for this vibrant atmosphere that we're in today. So when we talk about next generation architectures, there's something that we have to actually understand first, which is the amount of data that was generated on a colossal amount per day. So the next generation architectures need to be able to harness and embrace that type of information. For example, are you aware that we generate 2.5 quadrillion bytes a day? To put that into perspective,
that's a lot of noughts.
That's a lot of noughts, yes. To put that into perspective, just like a drop in the ocean, people will generate hundreds of millions of SMS messages a second. Facebook generates 4.6 billion posts a day. So when you have all this colossal amount of data hitting you from multiple directions, you need a mechanism to be able to actually harness that data, to be able to actually gather that data, and to be able to process that information. The biggest challenge that we're facing at the moment with current systems is that they have multiple different moving parts, and that's very difficult. If you look at pure physics, the moment you move data from one part to the other, the actual time to respond and to actually absorb that information takes a lot longer for you to actually do that. So what you need a consolidated data platform, something that offers you services where you can enable and disable these services when you require them. And not only that, to be able to have the speed and performance to be able to react and respond to these requests, and also to the most important thing, to be able to scale out on demand. So an architecture that provides all those key services is very paramount for the future of the next generation architectures. So what you look at, for example, in Couchbase, we introduced something called multi-dimensional scaling, and that's very important because what you would want is that you have data coming in. That data is raw data. It's what you apply to that data and how you extract that information. So with multi-dimensional scaling, you can enable and disable these services on the requirements and on that basis that you require to be able to process that information. So on top of that, what's also important for developers is to have a common platform. So if you have all these different services, but different APIs to be able to process that, the learning curve for these developers is a lot more and a lot costly. So what you would want for this generation architecture is not only a common platform where you're able to disable these services, but a common API. So the moment data comes in, I'm able to use a common API, be able to process that data, and then be able to actually push that information to the next process. So that's very important, it's very paramount. Just to give you an example, we had a customer, Sky, a well-known, it's basically available on the internet, etc. What they were facing is that during peak loads, for example, the Game of Thrones, they weren't able to actually handle the volumes of data. So what they wanted is an architecture that's able to scale on demand, and that's something what new generation architectures should be able to actually do. Firstly, have a common platform to enable and disable services, be able to scale on demand, and to be able to react and respond to those needs. And that's what the next generation architectures really require.
So, we're here at Big Data London, and this is clearly a proper big data challenge where you're looking at the volume, the velocity, and the variety of data.
Yes.
There's two more V's maybe that we want to talk about, which is about the veracity and the value of that data. How does your next generation architecture enable pursuing those goals?
Yeah, those are very, very important paramount parameters. Value is so important because if you have a data lake where you have all this information available in a common platform, but you're not able to do anything with that information, then basically it's a redundant information that you have there. So for example, we have helped customers, especially in luxury airlines, where what they wanted to do is to have that 360 view of that customer, how that customer behaves and reacts to certain events, what type of beverages they would like. So for example, in this airline, their business class, they're able to actually see that information, be able to process that data, and before, for example, you'd been making an order on the aircraft, it would take about 20 minutes. That was reduced down to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So customer satisfaction is very, very important. So the value of that information is paramount, because not only that, you want to be able to upsell and cross-sell. So the moment an interaction happens with your system, is you want to see the customer's past behavior. Can we actually upsell and cross-sell for this individual? So value is very, very important. And veracity is this information genuine? So for example, if you look at investment banks or credit cards, etc., they'll want to be able to actually understand, is this data genuine? Is this a fraudulent activity? Is this not a fraudulent activity? Do we actually affect the customer? Because it is a genuine activity, but we actually block that card. So veracity is very, very important to be able to actually harness that. So value and veracity is very important. We've seen in the past a lot of people and a lot of organizations, what they've done, they've gathered the data into a central repository, which is a good thing. But if you're unable to actually tap into that data and be able to use it, then that becomes a burden on the organization. So this, the two key aspects that you pointed out is very, very paramount and very important.
So what is it about the existing set of data architectures, the current generation, that can't handle those challenges that next gen can?
Yeah, so that's also a very important point. So in current systems, nothing is impossible. In current systems, the most fundamental aspect that you have to remember is relational database systems were designed in the 60s and 70s, and that was when data storage was very, very expensive, and what they came up with ideas to actually normalize the data. So you have customers that will normalize the data to the 6th degree. The problem with that is that organizations, once you change an attribute in that infrastructure, it has knock-on effects. So you have stuff like referential integrity, etc. In some organizations, it takes them months to be able to do this. So we helped one of the customers, for example, Tesco's. They were saying to us, it's not the actual other retailers out there, but it's like the Alibabas and the Amazons that is eating out into our basically market share. Exactly. Yeah. And we were unable to compete with them. One of the fundamental aspects behind that is how the data is structured. They want to be able to react in response to what the market needs. So in NoSQL technologies and new emerging technologies, is that the data structure, you want to be able to store it in such a way that I'm able to actually use that data, manipulate that data, change that data without affecting the overall infrastructure. So in legacy systems, you can actually do it, but you have to throw in a lot of hardware, you have to actually put a lot of information and a lot of actually cost associated with that. With other technologies, as emerging technologies, you want to be able to do it on commodity hardware. So for example, Couchbase, you can use commodity hardware, you can get that basically performance that you'd want, and the most important thing is the data fabric. I'm able to actually change the data based on the market needs. Say for example, you launch a new product. If it takes me 3 months to actually launch that product, then our competitors will be able to get into the market, be able to sell that information, all that product, and basically you lose out. So as you've seen in the high streets, a lot of high streets, there's lots of brands that are no longer existing because they couldn't actually move with the time. So it's very important that you do that. And that's what customers are doing, is that they understand that these are legacy systems, but they have their limitations. The new technologies are able to actually adapt and react and respond quite quickly, and that's what you want to be able to survive in this very competitive market. And if you're not able to do that, the biggest fear that you'll find a lot of customers saying, we understand this, but it's that leap of faith that you have to take to be able to actually adapt to these technologies.
And alongside those new technologies and those new architectures, the new methodologies, particularly developmental methodologies. So there's Agile, of course, there's DevOps, there's continuous integration, continuous development. These are new ways of working that are so far different from waterfall type programs of change. And as a Chief Data Officer or Chief Analytics Officer, I always describe my new initiatives as initiatives, not projects, because I can see people mentally reaching for their Prince 2 qualification and this and their waterfall graphs. So how is it that a new set of architecture approaches supports these new developmental approaches too?
Yeah, so it's very, very important, because if you look at the, should we say, the construction industry, it's a well-known, well-rehearsed industry for hundreds of years. You're able to actually build a building from cements and basically brick, etc. But in software development, it's a different ball game altogether. It's a massive challenge, because with software you can have bugs in there. And what's happened over the years in regards to the waterfall model is that people would actually go through a particular process. In the sense, you'll actually design it, then you'll actually develop it, then you'll test it, and then you'll actually play it to the actual business owners. But now in this modern age, you can't do that. For example, your mobile app, it's constantly updating on a regular basis, so softwares, instead of taking months and years to be able to do the process, you want to be able to actually shorten the cycle to be able to do that in days. So what's happening in the software industry is looking at ways for optimizing things, is looking at ways to enhance and improve these services. So what they come up with is agile development, in the sense where you have small teams broken down and working in parallel to be able to get to the market quite quickly. You have something called DevOps now, where what they're doing is you're developing and you're also looking at the operations. Now, in the past, you would have an administrator where you develop the code, test the code, give it to the administrator, does it work? It basically does work, is the business happy with it? And then it gets all the tick boxes. But now, because you're doing software in a very short and rapid period, you want to have the capability to be able to actually develop the software and also look at the operations. Would it meet the customer's needs? Would it actually be able to actually hit my SLAs? So for example, if you look at Amadeus, one of our key customers in Europe, they're able to actually do 8 million operations a second. That's 4 million reads and 4 million writes. And because they're able to actually develop their application quite quickly, using the technology with the new generation architecture we discussed before, in the sense speed, performance, enabling and disabling services. So that's very, very important for these new technologies or new development cycles to be able to actually embrace and harness. Now what I've seen in the industry, some industries, especially the new organizations, the startups, are embracing these skill sets and they're going quite rapidly. The old guard are very, very slow in regards to this and them taking time. But they have realized if they don't modernize, it's going to cause them a problem. The other thing that we're seeing quite a lot, the hot topic, is continuous integration and continuous operation. Now why is that? Because what developers and software and managers have seen is that you want to be able to get to the market quite quickly. And how do you do that? Do you have humans being able to actually test it? Or do you automate this process? So what's happening now, you're seeing organizations adopt this CI/CD pipeline process where you create a path of your start point and your end point, and what you want to be able to do is launch your application, in the sense you develop it, you push it out, it does all the regression and functional testing, and then you get the end result.
So your time to value is absolutely reduced so that you're generating value much faster.
Exactly, so that's the key thing here, is time to market and time to value. Yeah. Does this work or doesn't it work? Basically fail fast and move on to the next approach. If it works very well, let's put it into production. And that's a key thing, and as I pointed out to you, anyone out there who's looking at their mobile apps, you'll see constantly updates. If we went down the waterfall model where we used to actually do that, this would never have been able to be achieved, and the actual time to market would be quite extensive and slow.
Now Mo, the great news is we've got a question that's come in from one of our viewers on the BrightTalk platform.
Right.
And that's a question which is about, so what you've been talking about these new architectures, the huge amounts of data that we're seeing and these new techniques we're seeing, how would you harness those to improve data privacy?
So, so the thing is that this is a very important topic in the sense data privacy, especially with the European GDPR, etc. You have to actually ask yourself, okay, well I've got this information, but at the same time you have to protect that information. You have to have layers of security around that information. So data privacy is important. And we are seeing, like in the Facebook, etc., they use that data to be able to manipulate and change quite a lot of views in the actual general public. So with that, what we're seeing customers are doing, not only are they embracing the speed and performance of these new technologies, but also what is very, very paramount is to actually add layers of security. Now obviously with security, it does have a cost associated with the performance, but customers need that basically understanding and reassurance that if I give you more data, it will be protected. So customers and all data platforms, security is at the heart of all data and the next generation architectures. So you'll have stuff like role-based access control, you'll see basically privileges, you'll see all sorts of different security layers. And every industry I go to, no matter what we say to them, security is always a key and fundamental aspect. If you're unable to actually provide that service within the next generation architecture, you'll never be able to survive.
And through security, you generate the privacy that the customers and consumers and providers of data require.
Exactly, yes.
So I hope that's answered your question for the viewer that asked that question online. Thanks very much. Mo, let's come on now to one of the buzzwords of the last few years, artificial intelligence. When is that artificial intelligence? When is it machine learning? When is it just intelligent automation? There's a whole spectrum of things there. But it's clearly playing a role, artificial intelligence, tapping into legacy systems and embracing these new architectures. how do we make sure it's harnessing the rich, granular data set that's now available?
Yeah, so that's also a very important thing. So you look at systems in the sense, if you look at, for example, PayPal, they want to upsell and cross-sell quite rapidly. They're using Couchbase to be able to do that. But the biggest challenge is, in order to be able to upsell and cross-sell, you need that historical information about that individual. What has he brought in the past? How do we analyze that information? What information do we have of that customer? You need that 360 view of that customer. So artificial intelligence plays a massive role in that, and what you're seeing at this current stage is you have analytics. So analytics will actually give you insight of what's currently happening now, what's happened in the past. And then you reach that with artificial intelligence, and it says, okay, well this customer, it usually goes into this area, for example in London or Paris, but then again, what's his behavior, what's his pattern like, what do we need to be able to actually provide for this information to be able to give that reassurance. For example, if you look at Google, if I've got a flight, automatically it'll tell me that you've got a flight here, there's massive traffic out there, you need to make a move right now. So artificial intelligence will be playing a massive role with that, not just with us, but also our next generation, in the sense they want to be able to actually see what information that we have, past historical information, to be able to predict the actual future that's coming out there.
So where do you think advanced analytics, of the 4 disciplines of analytics, the prediction and prescription, where does that end, and where does true MI begin?
So if you look at basically, in the sense, analytics, so you'll have data. You'll have, that data gives you information, that information gives you knowledge. So in the sense, when you combine all those together, in the sense you have artificial intelligence, but then you're also looking at machine learning algorithms, etc. So artificial intelligence is, to me, it looks like you're having that information, but machine learning is a process where you have lots of neural networks, and that neural networks are unable to actually enhance the artificial intelligence. So for me, is that artificial intelligence and machine learning coexist with each other. Yeah.
And there's a question there about whether the artificial intelligence is being supervised in its learning or whether it's figuring it out for itself.
Yes.
Even to the point with your new architectures, your next generation architectures, that the artificial intelligence is cutting its own code.
Yes, yes. And that's true, because what we've seen in the past is that you're developing all these rapid developments, and also to get to market, what you would want is to be able to automate that. But also you have to also understand the ethics and the morals of certain things, because you don't want to develop something that you're unable to control. You want to develop something that you're able to control and you're able to actually monitor. And that's what we're seeing, is that in the sense, artificial intelligence should help the human race, not to basically impede them or supersede them, but to make life a lot easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that's made life a lot easier for you, for me, for just about everyone else here, is mobile.
Yes.
And the mobile channel is a crucial channel for selling and providing services now. So where are there shortfalls in the legacy systems, in the legacy architectures that will limit mobile and the ability to exploit it, and where is that solved in your next generation architectures?
So mobile is a paramount, it's fundamental to our lives, and if you basically disagree, then basically you're not in this area. So what we're seeing in this world is that everything centers around mobile. Your banking, your Instagram, your Facebook, everything goes through that mobile. Now the biggest challenge that you see in legacy systems, they weren't designed for that mobile era. They were designed to be able to process data, be able to actually give you a transaction. Now the thing that you're seeing at the moment, a lot of customers and an industry as a like, is that there's a lot of interaction to one transaction. So in the past you'll have aggregators, or for example you have, should we say, insurance brokers, and they were basically the old guard. Now you have all the different aggregators, so when you go on the website you have all these different functionalities, and if you're unable to provide a response from the top 3 results, you won't be able to actually survive. So with mobile, what you need to be able to do is provide that service where what information is gathered from the mobile, you're able to integrate that with your current systems, with your infrastructure. And legacy systems aren't able to do that. In the next generation architecture, it is fundamental and paramount, so they'll have APIs. The moment you touch your mobile, you're able to process that data and push it to the backend systems. So if you look at Couchbase, it's gone a step further, and what it's done is understood that at times you're not going to get internet connectivity, you want to be able to work offline. So what it has is that it's provided the capability to be able to work offline and online. And mobile is integrated within the actual backend systems. So it is fundamental and crucial. If you look at how we use our mobiles today, at the moment we probably, as an adult, we're probably using, statistically speaking, 48 times. The younger generations, you're probably talking about 87 times.
You've met my kids then.
Yeah, I don't know. And then in that sense, these are just average statistics. The people who are constantly on their mobile, you're probably talking hundreds, into several hundreds. So mobile is very important in order to survive the next generation.
We've got to thank you for that, and I think that no one would disagree with the importance of that channel. We've got another question through from the platform, from Bright Talk, which is one about conversion. So structured data and unstructured data. What techniques would you offer to convert unstructured data into structured data to render it available for analytics?
So in a sense, if you look at legacy systems, it's very, very structured, but now you have different IoT devices, you're going to look at 5G, data will be hitting you from multiple directions, and you need to be able to ingest that data and be able to process it. So when you have these unstructured data, you would need something to be able to actually do that transformation. We've seen lots of techniques. What's happening now is that as data comes in raw streams, you're able to transform that data in real time. So what we've seen in technologies is that you don't have these ETLs in the sense end of day processes. You want to do that in real time. So as data comes in, you transform that data and be able to use that information. So what we've seen here is that as data comes in, you transform it. And that's the only way to be able to actually process that colossal amount of information in real time.
There's a huge amount, isn't there?
Yes, there is, yeah.
I'd like to just wrap this up with one last question, if I may, Mo. Now, you're clearly right at the cutting edge of development here, and what an exciting place to be. And with the breadth of your experience across multiple sectors and the work that you've done both in research and in delivery for your company, you're cited on how far we can push the boundaries. Can I just step you back from those boundaries a bit and seek your advice to people who might be thinking, but we're not in this position yet, we're not at this cutting edge. What advice would you give people for how they can master the basics of their architecture so that it works in support of their business?
So that's a good point. I've seen this quite a lot. There's a lot of hesitance at the moment to be able to actually have that leap of faith to move into these next generations. My advice for them is that have that faith and move into this direction. Because if you don't, just a pure example we've seen in the media, retail industry for example, it can't survive. Lots of shops, are closing down. So the best thing to do is to actually look at these fundamental principles, look at basically microservices, how do I actually move into this era using microservices, using agile development, and also the key thing is the data structure. A lot of systems are still using relational databases. What you need to be able to do, as you pointed out today, data is hitting you from multiple directions and it's unstructured data. One of the best ways to actually handle this is in a JSON format. So have a look at basically how microservices is doing, look at cloud platforms, cloud integration services, look at how NoSQL technologies is helping the actual industry. And just to end at the point, multiple people out there are touching Couchbase without realizing, for example, LinkedIn, your BT accounts, etc. They're using their technology, but it wasn't because they, at the start, there was a lot of resistance, but now when they actually use the technology, they can see the benefits behind that.
So it's all about pointing to the benefits.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Mo, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today at Big Data London. All the more thanks because I know and our viewers now know that Mo took one of his days off, took a day holiday off to come and join us here today. Dr. Mohammed Haji, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us. I'm really grateful for that. And that's about it for now, from Big Data London for Bright Talk. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.